Prepare to be captivated by the business story of the week, hosted by me, Shaheen Shan. Join us on a journey through the twists and turns of entrepreneurial triumphs and setbacks. Immerse yourself in the narrative and witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. This is Business Story of the Week. All right, so welcome to Business Story of the Week. Today we have a former military Navy member. This guy has a really interesting story. So Peter Mann is now the founder and CEO of a company called Orancy. But let me introduce you to Peter Mann. Peter Mann is an incredible individual and he's got a fascinating background. Before diving into the business world, Peter spent 4 years serving our country and he was in the Navy. During this time, he sailed the Red Sea as a communications officer and later became a gunnery officer aboard the USS McCandless. After leaving military, Peter embarked on an entrepreneurial journey and founded the Austin-based air purification company, Allen Corp. His hard work paid off when he achieved a successful exit after 7 years. But his story doesn't end there. Peter took on a new venture as the CEO and founder of Orancy, a leading air purification company. They're in Virginia, and they're known for creating one of the most efficient and reliable air purification systems out there. Orancy caters to consumers, schools, organizations, and businesses. And Peter's dedication to clean air and his industry is evident as he is chair of the Cleaner Air Council. And not only is he driven as a businessman, but he's an advocate for autism awareness in the workplace. And this is one of the crazy things. Imagine this. Peter served in the military. He started a business, and it was only later in life when he received a diagnosis for autism. And that inspired him to raise awareness and promote inclusivity within organizations. Peter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. So the show is called Business Story of the Week, and we ask everybody in their own way. The first question I ask all my guests is, what is or what has been your entrepreneurial journey?
Wow, that's a great question. I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I always, had this drive and, interest in autonomy, but it was not something that I ever, I would say if I went back and thought about, where I was when I was younger, I don't know if I had the confidence to do it. And, I had 10 years experience at Tech Data and Dell, which are Fortune 100 tech companies, and the dot-com bubble burst was my push to okay, this isn't very fun. And that was the push I needed to step out and start, an entrepreneurial company, which I, co-founded with another person. That eventually led to, Allen. But it was really the push that got me into entrepreneurship.
All right. So here's my question for you. What was the biggest lesson you learned in the military? Now, our guests and as well as our listeners are heavily interested in entrepreneurship. And I know with people like Jocko Willink, and there's a lot of military guys out there now who are doing podcasts and doing shows, and they talk about discipline, people like David Goggins. What has the military taught you that you took to your business?
Yeah, I think it's all about the team. I think, when you're in the military, you actually don't choose your team. They're the folks that are there, but your success depends upon the team and the team working together. And, there's just a lot of variety and diversity in the military, and it's getting all these different types of people to kind of work together to, solve a common problem or really just be aligned. And that's really, to me, been the most common thing that I've seen with the military to, entrepreneurship and business.
That's amazing. So let's move forward a little bit with your autism diagnosis. So certainly you always knew that there was something that may be different about you. And then it goes unnoticed. Was it through your military life that you didn't even know that you had an autism diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just in the last couple of years is when it came about. You know, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, very few folks were diagnosed as being autistic. It's only really in the last 10, 15 years that people have been properly diagnosed, and the diagnosis is really geared to children. And so, if you're an adult, that you were just missed. And so now there's all these late diagnosed folks coming forward. I saw just a few days ago that Sia, the singer,
Yeah.
was recently diagnosed as being autistic. And it's like, it's not like there are not autistic people out there. It's just there's so many of us that are just going through life thinking we're just a little bit different, or and not really understanding what it is. And so, I'm kind of speaking out just because I know there's probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of folks out there who are autistic and just never been diagnosed. And it's just a game changer once you realize that and understand that about yourself.
That's amazing. That's pretty powerful. So let's take that a step forward. So at a certain point, you realize that you have a responsibility to the environment, and you decided to start a company that arguably makes the world's best air filter, air purifier. Tell me about that. How did you come to that place?
Yeah, I mean, I became interested probably around 20 years ago in air purification because my son was asthmatic and struggled with asthma, and I could see that things in the environment or the air were really triggering him. And so I wanted to do something really for him and people like him. That was the solution to really just make their quality of life much better. And so that's really been my drive, and I think that's different than a lot of other people that are in this space that they're just doing it and it's just a job. But for me, it's a bit more personal in terms of just the people in my life and customers that I know, where it's dramatically improved their lives and quality of life.
How do your air filters differ from the 3 million other air filters out there on the market?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that before COVID, there wasn't a ton of competition. I mean, there were several brands, but it wasn't like it is now. And in COVID, it kind of, the market blew up, and everybody and their brother kind of got into the market during COVID. So now it's a very competitive space. And it's to be honest, it's become more of a commodity type category. And so, the way to separate yourself is to, have a better story to tell and better connect with the folks that you're marketing to, and that starts with building a great product and having it at the right price. But I think also recognizing, as hard as this is to swallow, the category has become somewhat commoditized because there is just so much competition. And so,
Sure.
But quality is really important in having, highest quality filters. We merged with an electric motor company here in the U.S., and so we're in the coming months going to be manufacturing in the U.S., which will be a differentiator for us. There's a lot of things that we can do that other people can't do. It's like, if your product has a problem, we can fix it and send it back to you. It doesn't end up in the landfill. Like, we manufacture with sound environmental practices. You pay people a living wage, and you can see the people that are actually making your product and put a human face on a nameless, faceless, appliance.
Yeah. There you go. No planned obsolescence. And do you think you'll be able to stay competitive price-wise producing it here?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working for a couple of years on that, and I know if you look at Reuters and Consumer Reports have done some surveys, and they found 70 to 80% of consumers prefer American-made products, but very few people want to pay a price premium, and so that's what we've been working to solve. And we've figured that out. It's all in the design of the product to make it manufacturable, and it's taking labor out, which is by making it more efficient to manufacture. So that's what we've done. It's why I'm really excited about kind of the future.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think we could probably make a lot more here. Like you look at Elon and the work that he's doing with Tesla and SpaceX and all the stuff that he does. And I think, man, like, remember during COVID when Elon was like, you know what, California, you're just making it really hard for us to operate, so we're out. And the governor was like, see ya. And I was like, what? I was like, man, like there's the guy, arguably the Henry Ford of our time, maybe more with what he's doing with these gigafactories and all these things that he's doing. And you've got a state governor that's, basically kicking him out. And we don't get political on this show, not really. But I think the fact is that you've got to have that support from government. And the challenge that we face now as producers, from what I've discovered from my many years of selling on Amazon, in my other companies, we're one of the lead Amazon companies on the planet, making all kinds of stuff and accelerating Amazon companies and selling it on the Amazon platform, is that Amazon really spoiled the consumer. And even though the consumer's like, yeah, sustainability this, green this, all that, you're like, yeah, but you won't get it tomorrow. Ooh. Right? Or yeah, it's not going to be $99. It's going to be $169, but it'll be made in the US and eco and green and all that stuff. And they're like, ooh, but that means I can't have two. And so I think that consciousness shifted a little bit with Amazon, right? Where people say, is Amazon a force for good? Is it a force for bad? They really changed the market. But at the same time, they've gone ahead and spoiled the end consumer, not necessarily in a good way. So on the other end of that spectrum, I feel like American manufacturers now have to step it up, because in addition to figuring out how you stay competitive with product and technology, you got to figure out how to stay competitive with cost, right? You got to compete with these Chinese companies. You can be more. You can't be 10 times more, right? Because people just aren't going to pay it. The economy won't hold that. So how do you manage that gap between quality, producing it in the U.S., and cost?
Yeah, and so, like I referred to earlier, it's really all in the design of the product. If you look at the cost of components and raw materials, things like that, it doesn't cost that much different in the U.S. versus in China. What does cost is the cost to put it together, the development costs, the tooling costs. Some of those things are more expensive, and so what we've done is, if you look at a Chinese air purifier, I don't know, maybe it has 50 to 100 parts in it, but if you can make it with a fraction of those parts, you just make some of the parts a little bit more complex. They assemble so much faster. Like we can make a product probably 3 or 4 times faster than you can in a Chinese factory. And so that means we just don't have all that extra labor that goes into the product that allows us to price it comparable to the Chinese imports and not have to deal with the U.S. consumer that doesn't want to pay even 5% more for a U.S. product, and that's just the reality of it. And so you can't fight that. You have to figure out a better way of making it. And the Chinese have built out a fantastic supply chain, which we're not there in the U.S., and that's why I think you're seeing a lot of government money going into things like chips and batteries and a number of other technology areas, which I think are really important. But I think it's also important to really build out the supply chain to effectively compete with them, because we're not quite where they are, at least in terms of high-tech products.
Yeah, I noticed that, Peter, when I was producing supplements. And here's a crazy thing. My supplement companies produce supplements for Chinese resellers. And you think, well, isn't everything cheaper in China? No, the only thing that's cheaper in China is labor. So if American manufacturers like you and us could use ingenuity, could use better design, smarter design, more efficient design, and reduce the biggest cost, which is labor. And that's not great for the workforce, but there'll be other jobs created just by the nature of our innovation. Then we could be very competitive price-wise with countries like China. China has the big efficiency because they can pay people 20 cents an hour, have them live at the factory, and you've got this massive workforce that's cheaper than a machine. But when you get that machine going, like things like printing are cheaper here because printing now it's almost completely hands off if you look at the major printing, packaging presses and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of things. The cigarette industry, which I'm not a big fan of, also similarly has huge automation. If you look at, you can run, 50,000 cartons of cigarettes basically with two people running the machines, and one of them is just to make sure nothing breaks down. You need an engineer and a dude to run the machine, and that all is completely automated. So the U.S. can really excel in a lot of these industries, and I really commend you for thinking about that and for being on top of it. If people want to connect with you or learn more about your products or purchase your air purifiers, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. Our website is oransi.com, ORANSI.com. And my name's Peter Mann, and I'm on LinkedIn. That should be pretty easy to find. Just search for me.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Amazing. And let's just say last question. If you got somebody who's got autism, who's got asthma, who's having breathing problems, who has allergies, which, I mean, who doesn't have allergies, and wants to get an air purifier, which one would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on what size your room is. We have 3 models right now. We'll be adding, some additional ones over the summer, and it's really just a function of your room size. And so we have our, Mod Junior model is really for small, medium-sized room, and our Mod Plus models are for larger size spaces. They just have more airflow, and that's the main difference in terms of finding an air purifier that's going to work for your space.
Super. Okay. So it's oransi.com, ORANSI.com. We are not affiliated with Oransi, but they have some pretty good modern looking HEPA air filters, and they're soon to be produced in the U.S. By a veteran-owned company. So anybody that's interested, take a look at that. If you want to look up Peter Mann, he's on LinkedIn and on the internet. Peter, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.